Today we have a question from Marissa Mundy from Restorative Counseling Services in Atlanta, Georgia. And Marissa had a few questions, so we'll probably do a couple episodes with Marissa's questions. But the first question she had is, how do you create a budget that's not profit first? How do you create a budget that's not profit first? Well, there's a couple things that we want to think through just when we're thinking budgets at all. And you want to have more money coming in than going out. So, as just a basic principle, let's start with that you want to have a basic idea of what's coming in. So, before I started doing profit first, which I loosely do that, I think it helps you stay organized, but there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. As a general rule of thumb, I would take whatever came in, subtract the costs, so all the expenses, so that could be rent, marketing, whatever, and then I would pay myself 50% of whatever the net was. So why 50%? Well, for a few reasons. I always wanted to have more than enough money at tax time. At the end of doing my taxes for each year, then I would do a payout. So say over time, I'm growing that fund and paying myself 50% of it, and then tax time comes and there's $50,000 in the account, and then maybe I only owe 10,000. So then I may say, okay, I want to keep a few months of expenses, for my rent, or if I have an assistant or other systems, might want to keep a few months of those expenses in there in case we have a down month. So maybe there's that 50,000, I owe 15,000 in taxes. So now I've got 35,000 in there. Maybe I decide I'm going to keep, 15 in there. So then at tax time, I would pay myself out that 20 additional thousand as a disbursement, an owner disbursement. And so that's one way to do it, where you're kind of building up the fund throughout the year, and then you do a bigger payout. You can also kind of do some payouts after you do your quarterly taxes. One year I had an accountant that I ended up firing, and he was so off with my quarterly taxes that at tax time I owed $30,000 more than I thought. And luckily, I had used this method where for throughout that whole year, I was just saving up the money. So I actually had that money just sitting in the account. I thought it was going to be a payout to me and my family, but it wasn't. But at least I had it. I didn't have to do an extension or kind of be underwater. So as kind of a global approach, and again, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a bookkeeper. I'm speaking from personal experience. My attorney always makes me say that. So just make sure that you're talking to some professional at some point with your budget. So when you're looking at making a budget, you want to think about a few different things. You're doing this as a business, not as your volunteer work, I'm assuming. And so, we want to make sure that you're making a good amount of money, that money isn't just going all over the place. So there's some basic things that you're going to need to have. You're going to need to have probably electronic health records, especially if you're billing insurances. It's almost always in your interest to have some sort of assistant or virtual assistant that's answering phones, scheduling intakes, even if you're a part-time practice. I had a virtual assistant even when I still had my full-time job, because then we could have the phone calls throughout the day, get those people scheduled in. It was super efficient. So you want to look at those efficiencies. Also, when you're building your budget, you want to make sure you have at least 10% or so that you can put into marketing. Very few therapists are putting money into marketing. And so even if you're doing 5% of your budget is going into that marketing, that's a huge amount that you're putting into the marketing to really get your name out there. And so when you're thinking about marketing, there's a few different things that you want to think through. So Zig Ziglar teaches us about know, like, and trust. So first, you want people to even know that you exist, so that if a friend says, I'm going through this thing, do you know any good therapists, that you come to mind if you're a good fit for that person. So we want to just do general brand awareness. Next, we want to have the people like you, and so that you have kind of a unique selling point, that you stand out, that you aren't just your typical practice that helps people going through anxiety, depression, whatever. You want it to be that you stand out. So sometimes that those marketing dollars could go into having great professional and fun and lighthearted headshots done. It could be doing some video marketing. It could be a number of different things. And so then you may also want to do some pay-per-click advertising through Google or through Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, depending on what your goals are. And so then also know, like, trust. Now we want to definitely make sure that people trust you with what you're talking about, what you're helping people with. And so that's going to be through your website, through blogging, through that sort of marketing. So some of your budget you may want to have go into that. I'm a big fan of experimentation, of doing A/B testing. So if you're putting $1,000 into one thing and $1,000 into another, see which one wins. If you're putting 5 hours of your time into one thing and 5 hours into another, see which one wins, which gives you the best return on investment. So you're then gonna be looking at your overall budget. I mean, if you're a telehealth therapist, you don't need to worry as much about rent, but most people are gonna have some sort of office. You typically don't want that to be more than 15% of your overall gross income. But in some markets, that's really unreasonable. So, I mean, if you're in downtown New York, midtown, or wherever, that's going to be more expensive than if you're in more of a rural community where maybe there's not as much competition for business space. And so you're also going to want to look at how these trends work over time. So, are you spending more on marketing over time than you expected? Are you spending more on staff over time? Where are you seeing things grow and where are they contracting? So when you build out that budget, you want to make sure that you're at least taking 50% of that net home. Uh, and really, that amount, you can quickly figure out the math that, if you each week are just multiply that out by how many weeks that you're doing it. So let's just run some basic numbers. So uh, one thing that I do when I'm doing a budget is I'll take the amount that I want to make and multiply it times 1.5 at minimum. So let's say I want to make $100,000. Going to multiply that times 1.5. So that's $150,000 a year that needs to come in. Now you need to run your own numbers to see if that 1.5 variable is accurate or if you need to increase that to 1.6, 1.7 to account for taxes and other things. Let's say we use that 1.5. Now I can say, okay, how many weeks a year do I want to work? So maybe I want to take 4 weeks off. So we're going to divide that 150 by 48 weeks. So that means I need to bring in $3,125 per week. So now I can either divide that by what I'm charging to know how many sessions I need to do, or I can look at my schedule and see how many openings I have, and then that tells me what I need to charge. So you can do it either way. So let's say I look at my schedule and I see that on Mondays I want to do 3 sessions. On Tuesdays I can do 5, so now I'm up to 8. On Wednesdays I can do 5 more, so now I'm up to 13. And then, say you have, I don't know, you can do 7 on Thursday. So around 20 sessions a week. So if I say, I don't think that I'm going to have many no shows, but let's do it based on 22 sessions a week to give a little buffer. So if I take that $3,125 a week, divide that by 22 sessions, that means I have to be making $142.04 every single session. So you may say, I'm going to just charge $150 per session and be private pay, or I'm going to be out of network. Or if you're taking insurance where you're only getting 115, that means your private pay needs to be significantly higher, like 175, 180, so that you can hit that financial goal. And so when you know your numbers, that then allows you to predict your budget. It allows you to do so many other things.